Okay, so pretty basic observation. Mergers and acquisitions are pretty cool. I get a lot of us know that. But with these two, I would definitely say that they fall in line with that. What's up guys, my name is Darren Jackson. Welcome back to yet another video. Thank you guys so much for stopping by. And obviously a lot of this is old news. Back in early August, Metamaterials announced a $90.8 million, mind you Canadian dollars, acquisition with a Canadian-based technology company called Nanotech Security. So it's fair to say that the board of directors for each company have obviously agreed to this, but as long as the shareholders agree to this in the shareholders meeting, which should take place by the end of this month, then the merger should be finalized and actually take place by sometime next month. And again, most of that besides the shareholder meeting date might be old news. But what is fairly new, or at least to me, is the interview or the audio interview between a moderator and the CEOs of each company, Nanotech and Metamaterials. And in that meeting, I personally learned a lot of information that made me a bit more excited, not just for this acquisition, but for potential acquisitions to come based off this one. On a side note, shout out to another YouTuber, Apex Investors. He actually had a video up of the audio interview with his own notes to show when certain subjects were going to come up, and he would occasionally give his input. Really great information, definitely a big basis of this video. So make sure you guys check out his channel as well. But obviously guys, we're gonna break down this video as always. So hopefully by the end of this video, we can recap what Nanotech Security is. Then I can dive into what each company is getting out of this merger. So with Nanotech and then with Metamaterials. And then I'll just kind of give my overall opinion for those of you guys that are actually interested in that. So let's not waste any time. Let's get started. So for starters, what is Nanotech? So Nanotech is a company that basically applies security features onto rolls of films and gives it out to different distributors. And it's a fairly niche type company in general, based off that definition, in my opinion. The sectors or different industries that they go towards are fairly niche as well. One of them is in the branding industry. So they'll have these rolls of film with these security features on there, and they'll give it to distributors who will then give it to different types of companies for branding purposes, predominantly tickets. For example, they actually have or had a contract with the UEFA Euro Cup for soccer teams to be able to apply security features onto tickets. Fairly important to separate the good tickets from the bad, so if you ever thought about that, thank Nanotech. And the other niche that's actually fairly interesting, pretty cool, is banknotes. So a lot of currencies from US denomination to Canadian and other different types of countries' currencies have security features to be able to separate real dollars from counterfeit dollars. And they actually provide rolls of that similar film to distributors who will then provide it to central banks, and they can use those to put those on currencies for security features. Now, even though they typically work with distributors and not the actual company directly, they actually do have a partnership with what is noted as one of the top 10 central banks of the entire world, but they're not able to disclose that. Hopefully they disclose that sometime after the merger, because something like that could send the stock price going up. But regardless, at least knowing that they have that partnership is always a good thing. And on a side note, one thing that makes that niche, the banknote niche, something really significant is the fact that I didn't realize that over 10 to almost 20 billion banknotes are made every single year, which maybe this year makes sense with printing money that a lot of other YouTubers in the news have been talking about, but those have different values. But the fact that they make that many notes in general is really amazing, and I'm not sure of any other company that does that. And there probably are, but at least we know that Nanotech is in a category of some type of industry that we're probably going to need for a while. So the next thing we want to know is, what does Nanotech bring into this acquisition? What type of value do they have? Why does Metamaterials want to be with Nanotech? For starters, it's their technology. So applying the security features onto rolls of film occurs in a process called roll-to-roll lithography. And Metamaterials, I believe, has something similar to that. There's actually a video on YouTube, which I can leave in the description box below if you guys want to check that out. But it seems like Nanotech's process is a lot quicker, and I believe they're able to provide 7 million meters of film per year, which is fairly significant. And Metamaterials will be able to have access to that equipment. Not only access to that equipment, but throughout this acquisition, Metamaterials will also be able to have nanotech's manufacturers, engineers, and research and development team that work solely with that product and with the niches that Nanotech's working with. That'll definitely be a benefit for Metamaterials, especially with what they do with their nanotech and producing that. Another thing that they bring to this whole acquisition is something called verticals, and that's a term when it comes to business that I personally never heard of before, or maybe not at least in that way. So verticals are a type of company that may do something with a specific niche to a specific market, whereas horizontals is a type of company that may provide goods and services to different industries. So for example, a horizontal based company may be Walmart. They provide furniture, they provide groceries, they have a gas station, other stuff like that. And in the same type of industry, grocery stores, for example, a vertical type company may be Whole Foods. It's food, and specifically, it's primarily organic. But point being, Nanotech has their verticals, branding and banknotes, and all that together is security features for each. So they provide that as well with Metamaterials on top of the other verticals that Metamaterials already has. Speaking of Metamaterials, obviously we need to know, what does Metamaterials provide to Nanotech for this acquisition? They both have to be able to work together to make this benefit each other for the long term. Metamaterials, for starters, brings, yet again, other verticals. Some of the main things that Metamaterials is really honing on with their nanoweb technology is 5G communications with their antennas and the reflective film that can reflect waves to be able to provide 5G data to other places that might be a little more difficult. They also have their medical stuff. We actually made a video fairly recently where we talked about their GlucoWise and their home hub, to where people can test for sugar levels and stuff like that without actually dealing with the pain, and it's just as efficient. And they also have their consumer electronics, which hopefully we'll get more information about in the future. And while I was doing the research on Nanotech, I discovered that Nanotech has an 11-acre, 105,000 square foot facility, and I believe they only use 30,000 square feet of that facility. So one thing that Metamaterials would bring as well is more equipment to be able to fill up that facility, so Nanotech can actually be using the entire facility. More importantly, Nanotech's actually providing extra expansion for Metamaterials. Point is, they're both helping each other out. So after reading about the merger and acquisition, and after listening to the interview on Apex Investors channel, this is basically how I feel about the overall thing. Obviously, I'm pretty excited about it. I really think it's going to be beneficial for both companies. So one thing that I've learned on this investing journey as a young investor that other investors look for when investing into companies is the amount of employees that company has. And with this merger and acquisition, the combined company should be able to have between 120 and 160 regular employees. And not just that, but they're also going to be hiring sales teams and other engineers and maybe other people in the research and development team. So a lot of expansion is always great. And in the interview, George Palacaris actually talked about what him and Metamaterials as a whole actually believe should be the overall theme of the mergers and acquisitions that they do from this point on, which is what I think this merger and acquisition, and potentially those to come, is really going for, is to expand their building scales and reduce their production costs. And Nanotech is definitely going to be able to help with that. For example, their building site has enough room to add for Metamaterials products, or for Metamaterials to help Nanotech expand. Metamaterials is working on expanding on their plan, so that's more expansion. Obviously, that requires more employees. Also, Nanotech's roll-to-roll lithography equipment that they're able to help Metamaterials with is expected to help Metamaterials double their production within the next year or two, which means for the company and ultimately for us as investors, that's more revenue, that's potentially more companies that they can attract, because they can let them know that we can provide such and such in a shorter period of time, and potentially for a lot cheaper than what it once was, which could be positive on our end as we see the price continue to go up. The revenue aspect, I definitely think will kick in, because again, their biggest niche as far as Nanotech prior to this acquisition, in my opinion, is the banknotes. Again, there's about 17 to almost 18 billion banknotes that are made every single year, and hopefully they can get their hands on the majority of that. But also, Metamaterials is an industry that is constantly growing and going into different subsectors. And people believe that Metamaterials as an industry could be worth about $10 billion by 2030, which is going to come faster than we all think. And George Palacaros really prides himself and his company for being the first metamaterials public company in the stock market. So hopefully they can hit the ground running and continue to hit the ground running, but we'll just have to wait and see. But guys, let me know, what do you guys think about this whole acquisition? What do you guys think about the interview, if you were able to listen to it? What are your opinions? Make sure you leave your comments below. I always say I love having these conversations with you guys because it helps us all grow ultimately as investors, or at least I hope it does. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. And speaking of videos, make sure you guys watch some of these other videos, which I hope help you guys on your investing journey as I have in mine. And as always, I appreciate you guys watching. And until next time, take care.